meeting. I'd like to call the November 13th, 2024 Town Board meeting to order. Ms. Marco, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Dobson?
Present.
Mr. Mastriani?
Present.
Mrs. Galucci?
Present.
Mr. Schlad?
Present.
And Mrs. Collins?
Present.
5 present.
Quorum is present. Mr. Schlad, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We don't have any public hearings tonight, so we'll go straight into privilege of the floor. The one thing I would like to remind anybody who's speaking is you have 4 minutes. When you get to around 3.5 minutes, you'll see my hand go up, and if you could wrap up your comments, I'd appreciate it, okay? Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Marlene Whitehead.
Hi, my name is Marlene Whitehead. I'm from 1276 Princetown Road. I'm here with my husband, Johnny, and on behalf of our neighborhood. And I'm here again about the tree cutting that was done on Princetown Road. I followed a few other people that have some concerns that I'd like to call your attention to. One is Mary Anderson, who wrote a letter to the editor in the Schenectady Gazette in June about the bike path in Ballston Lake. Excuse me. David Quilliman wrote a letter to the Express newspaper October 31st, and it was also on News Channel 10. His is a greater concern about some kind of spray that's coming from the trains now that there's no blockage and it's covering their cars and their house, and he's concerned about their health, and brought it to the attention of Ed Kanowski, the town supervisor in Stillwater. So I've heard a rumor that there is going to be some kind of restoration of aesthetics, even maybe one of those walls like they have on the thruway, a sound barrier. That would be terrific if that happened, but it's just a rumor. We heard from some of the workers. I would just like to encourage you, if there's any way that you can follow up on that and do something to restore the trees and shrubs and aesthetics on Princetown Road, that we would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Claudia Savoy.
My name is Claudia Savoy, and I live at 1024 Peter Road. I've lived on Peter Road since 2014. Peter Road is an incredibly busy street to live on. Not only are there multiple bus stops, but it's also heavily traveled by walkers, runners, and bike riders. It is also used as a cut-through between High Bridge and Kings Road. It's sped down, and people are constantly running the 4-way stop sign. This past summer, when it was used as a detour for the bridge project, we had cars going 50-plus miles an hour down our 30-mile-per-hour road. On several occasions, there were cars drag racing side by side and running the stop signs and almost hitting pedestrians and other cars. When I reached out to the town about the concern, I was told to call Rotterdam Police Department. When I called Rotterdam Police Department, they told me they were getting a lot of calls and complaints and that they just can't sit here all day. I had a nice reply to that. One morning, when I did finally see an officer sitting at the 4-way stop, he was astounded by the number of people who ran the stop sign. I think it was 5 people in the span of like 45 minutes to an hour. I'm told that it's one of the worst 4-way stops in Rotterdam. My concern is that this already heavily traveled street is going to become even more dangerous to live on. We have many small children who reside on Peter Road. Myself, I have 3 of them. And I worry that it's only a matter of time before someone gets hit. My second concern is that there has been a recent uptick in the building of apartments and condos in the Mohonasen School District. If you've recently been to the schools, you will know that, especially the elementary schools, you know that they are completely packed with children. There hasn't been any additions to the schools to accommodate all the children coming into the district. And I ask you, who suffers? The kids and the staff. The classrooms are already overcrowded, and they were built when class sizes were a lot smaller. The children are not getting the services and education they deserve. I could go on, but I want to leave you with this. When we bought our homes in this neighborhood, none of us thought that a single-family home would be torn down and 20 condos put up in its place. We did not sign up for that. Why would we want to live next to that? The extra traffic and noise is not something our peaceful neighborhood wants. I ask you to please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thomas Morgan.
All right. Thomas Morgan, Day Road, and here we are again. I'm here to talk about condominiums. I understand this is a formality, that you're going to send it off to Planning Commission for recommendation. That's fine. But I wanted to, because you guys haven't been here, some of you know or some of you don't know, because when the Stewart's thing happened on the other, across the road from where this property is, I knew instantly, as soon as you allowed the change of zone for residential to commercial, that this would be on the agenda, and look how long it's been. And now it's on the agenda because they want to change the zone. This started in August of 2014. They put changed the zone request for 4 8-unit apartments, for a total of 32 apartments on the same property. Planning Commission voted it down 7-1. And needless to say, the neighborhood showed up in force. So the applicant then told the board, you know, pull the thing from the agenda. We want a public hearing. And the town board at the time said no. So they lost that one. And they came back a few months later, and they proposed 3 8-unit apartments, tried to shrink it down to 24 units. Once again, that didn't happen. And let's see. So they came back and they shrunk it even more. They went to 8 units, 2 8-unit apartments to 16. So now they went to 32, and they're shrinking it down. They're trying to get it passed. Highbridge residents formally submitted a supermajority petition. They knew, and the petitioner knew that the makeup of the board wasn't going to allow that, and they pulled it. They came back 3 years later, 2018, and tried to put 4 8-unit apartments again. All right, so it was a unanimous vote by the commission to send a negative recommendation, and the town didn't act on it. So 4 times they came and they left, and none of the conditions, the only condition I know of that changed was that before, the town required for all new builds, for new builds to attach to an existing sewer line. The existing sewer line on Highbridge Road belongs to Spectrum. They're the ones that paid for it, and they couldn't attach to it. So somehow now they're putting in, according to the plan, it looks like they're putting in a leach field. So somehow the rule has changed, maybe for them, for something else, I don't know how it changed, but now they're putting a leach field in, where before it wasn't, it was required they hook up to an existing line. So I just wanted to bring you guys up to date with that. In fact, this is, I'll read this if you guys want.
I'll give them a copy.
This is not exactly what I said, but it's a timeline.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brenda DeRozian.
Brenda from Rotterdam. Before I start, I want to ease Jack's anxiety, so when I start my talking, sir, put the earplugs in, and you will not have to hear me. I know, I hear you back there. I don't want it, that's yours. Okay, we're going to start off. But first, Mr. Slag, I want to thank you very much for trying to explain the overtime of the Rotterdam police. You did it in such a way that you were not condescending to me. That I appreciate. That is what I expect from a board member. The police department needs to understand that I appreciate what the Rotterdam police do for Rotterdam. I just asked the question, and that question could have been answered the way Mr. Slag answered. But no, I had to listen under miscellaneous. Jack's comments towards me personally. You were so off base, you were condescending to me, and I guess that's okay. And towards the end of it, you're telling me that instead of coming to the meetings in 2025, because she comes every week, I thought that was what we were supposed to do. I thought that is our responsibility to attend the meetings, whether you like what we have to say or you don't like what we have to say. No, don't talk now, man. I am not happy. I am not happy being treated the way you treated me last week. And Mr. Dobson, please explain to me, or Jack, I think I'll call you Jack, you call me Brenda, explain the conspiracy that I am giving to the public. Please, explain it to me. And I hope you will, under miscellaneous, in such a way that you're not condescending. Now let's go to Joe. When are you leaving? When are you leaving the town board? You turned yourself in. You committed mail theft. When are you going to leave the town board? The town board deserves integrity. And by you staying on this board, knowing what you did, you stole mail. You stole mail. And you're still here. And you had the nerve to still be here. Between you and Jack, oh, we got a great town board here. At least Mr. Slag, at least he treated me with respect, and he answered the best that he could. And I'm not even going to go on the lawyer because you were so far off base it isn't funny. But Joe, I'm here to say you need to leave. It's not me. Bunch of people in Rotterdam. I go in Scotia because I have some stuff to do in Scotia. I have a part-time, and they're all coming to me. Why is he still there? You owe the residents of Rotterdam and the people in district, whatever the district is, that you were representing. You owe those people an explanation. And you owe the Rotterdam people, you owe the Rotterdam people for you to leave. And you, Mr. Dobson, the next time you ever talk to me that way, you will need to leave.
Well, thank you. That's it, so for privilege of the floor, we'll move on to our first resolution. Our first resolution is Resolution 416 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Accepting town board meeting minutes.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the resolution.
Motion.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second? I'll second. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 417 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To accept revenue for the town clerk's office for October 2024.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 418 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To approve budget transfers to the 2024 budget.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mrs. Galucci. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the motion? I'm sorry, on the question. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 419 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To approve budget transfers of gas and diesel to the 2024 budget.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Schlag. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 420 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To adopt a seeker negative declaration on a change of zone application from multifamily residential R3 to general business B2 located at 676 Maryville Road.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 421 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To enact local law number 21 of 2024 to amend chapter 270 zoning of the town code related to a change of zone request on a plus or minus 16.19 acres of a plus or minus 65.8 acres parcel from multifamily residential R3 to general business B2 located at 676 Maryville Road.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mrs. Galucci. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 422 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To recognize the introduction of introductory local law blank of 2024 to amend chapter 270 zoning of the town code relating to a change of zone from agricultural A1 to general business B2 located along Old Maryville Road and refer to the Planning Commission for a report and recommendations.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion? I'll make the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 423 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To recognize the introduction of introductory local law blank of 2024 to amend chapter 270 zoning of the town code relating to a change of zone from single-family residential R1 to multifamily R3 located at 759 Peter Road and refer to the Planning Commission for report and recommendation.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
You know what, there are vacant parcels of land in our town, or underutilized parcels of land. It's not up to the government to develop them, but to work with developers where the opportunities exist. I would like to know what, I understand that the concern with the traffic on Peter Road, that is, it's tremendous, and all throughout. The condos that are proposed there will attract an older clientele and a younger clientele. There's no affordable, there's not many other pathway to putting homes in there. With the cost of materials there, it wouldn't be a profitable equation. It would go it would be left empty. And then the owner would have to sell the property, and then we'd have to get another proposal for what could potentially go there. Curious to know what, some of the thoughts are as to what you'd like to see there. Single-family homes, mixed use. Single-family homes are not, in this market, is not a potential. So my vote is yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 424 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Request for bids for Rotterdam Police Department vehicle maintenance and repairs.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a
I'll
motion?
make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Schlag. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 425 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Request for bids for Rotterdam Police Department car wash services.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a
I'll
second?
second it.
Second by Mr. Schlag. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 426 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Request for bids for Rotterdam Police Department uniform and civilian clothing dry cleaning.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a
I'll
motion?
make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Schlag. I'm sorry, excuse me. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 427 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Requesting bids for the Town of Rotterdam Water District Number 5 leak detection survey phases 3, 4, and 5.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 428 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Requesting bids for installation of new fencing off Kings Road.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. I'm really sorry. Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 429 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Authorize change order number 1 with HMA Contracting Corporation for the Rotterdam Senior Center Lot Improvements Project.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, 3 of
I
us.
heard all three people.
First time.
Okay, we'll try that again. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr.
I'll
Schlot.
second it.
Okay, and seconded by Mrs.
Galucci.
Galucci.
Thank you.
Okay. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 430 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To authorize a final release of retainage to Empire Electric New York LLC.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mrs. Galucci. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 431 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Call for a public hearing to receive comments from the public on the Town of Rotterdam proposed 5-year PHA Plan for Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Seconded by Mr. Schlag. Okay. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 432 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To negotiate and execute an agreement with Cusick and Company Certified Public Accountants, LLC for HUD auditing services.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion? I'll make the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 433 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To negotiate and execute an agreement with Cusick and Company Certified Public Accountants, LLC for financial auditing services of the year 2023.
Okay? Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mrs. Galucci. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Schlag. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 434 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To adopt the 2025 preliminary budget as the annual budget for the town of Rotterdam for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2025.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Schlag. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 435 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To schedule a special meeting of the town board.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mrs. Galucci. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Did you say?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Schlag. And on the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. And that concludes our resolutions for this evening. We'll now go on to liaison reports. Do any of the board members have anything they wish to say on the liaison reports? Okay, then we'll move on to miscellaneous. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say on the miscellaneous? I'd like to just mention a couple things. On December 8th, from 4 to 7 p.m., we're going to have our holiday festival. Last year, we had to have it indoors, so I'm praying, I don't care if it's cold and snowy, but that it's not raining. We will have free cookie decorating for the children, free hot cocoa, holiday music, pictures with Santa, do-it-yourself crafts for the children to do. The Rotterdam Police Department, I believe, has toys that they are giving away like they did at our fall, excuse me, our fall festival. And we'll also have Clydesdale horse-driven drawn carriage rides, and that's all for free. So I hope that the residents come out, especially for the children. It's nice to get together as a community and enjoy these kind of events. I'd also like to remind everyone that on December 7th, it's the day before the holiday festival, here at Town Hall at 1 o'clock, we will have the 31st annual Pearl Harbor Day service. I think it's very important that we remember, we just had Veterans Day on Monday. I think it's very important that we always honor and remember our veterans and also their families who also give up a lot when someone they love is in the service, whether it's a brother, a sister, a mom, or a dad, a husband or wife. And, you know, I hope that we get a good turnout for that and that we honor the Pearl Harbor, the men that we lost that day. Okay? And on one last note, we're also going to participate, like we usually do, in the U.S. Marine Corps' Toys for Tots. We will have a drop-off box here at the town clerk's office. Town clerk and town hall is open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So anyone who would like to bring in a toy and drop it off, it helps any children in our area to make sure they have a Merry Christmas. We must have them in by December 9th, and please don't wrap them, because they wrap them and make them age appropriate to whatever family is going to get them. That's all I have. Does anybody else have anything under miscellaneous?
Yeah, so I do. So anybody who knows me knows that I'm not quiet, and I've been quiet, but one thing I'd like to say is in regards to Joe. I've watched Joe for 4 years be an integral party or member of the Energy Committee. I've worked with him on the Parks Committee personally. It's funny because you'll go to different places and Joe will introduce you to a resident and say, oh, Ron, this is a resident that had a problem with the water and drainage. Can I, you know, you want to meet them, this is what's happening, and he'll talk to these people and engage these people. And he's even went as far as, I believe, giving Brenda a ride home when she didn't have a car. For me personally, I wouldn't ask any member of this board to resign. I know I spoke to the attorney, and it's not a situation of impeachment. That has to come from a different level. But I think that one thing that I'll say is I'm not a big church-going person. And one thing I will say about Brenda is Brenda has the bravery to show up here and say what she has to say, as opposed to what I see on Facebook and the emails I see, the threatening emails that I see. It's cowardly. And Brenda, you're not a coward. You do show up here and say your piece, and we may not agree, but you come here and say your piece every time. I appreciate one news station staying, because usually you just get a clip and then they run out of here. So that's great. But I'm not a very religious person, and I started to go to church recently, probably the last 3 or 4 years. And one thing that I did learn from church is that we're all sinners. We all do wrong. The best we can do is ask for some forgiveness. It's a spiritual thing. You know, God gave His only Son, His perfect Son, Jesus, to be crucified on the cross to abolish our sins as a group, or as a society. So the only thing I will say is I think that's up. What happens with this situation? It's up to Joe. It's in what's Joe's heart. And he only has one individual to answer to, in my opinion. But I would never ask for one person in this board to resign. That's completely up to them. So thank you.
Anyone else have anything under miscellaneous?
Yes, I'd like to give an update on the lead-line service inventory, just notifying our residents that this week, you're going to get a letter in the mail from the town. The town is required by EPA and the health department to provide notifications. We spent the better part of a year working on our surveys for lead line services, working on obviously getting the lead out. As part of that initiative, the town is required to provide notifications. So we're indeed sending out many mailings this week for Water District number 5. Again, rough numbers, I think we had lead services roughly around, I'm going to say the 10 services so far, in the 70s galvanized. And we got like almost 9,000 of them that are unknown. So we are required by the EPA and the health department to send notifications out to notify every resident. So if you receive a letter that says it's unknown, we get the next 10 years to figure out what it actually is. And with your cooperation, we can either extend this out for 10 years, or residents can continue to get on our website and fill out a survey so we have a better handle on what your service type is from a material standpoint. The town is actively engaged in this process through our consultant. We have a member, a town worker that's actually out. So when we do get requests from our residents about, hey, I can't decide what it is, he's been very helpful. We're going to continue with that initiative. And we only ask again that you help us out. Because the sooner that we can actually meet the requirements of the regulatory agencies here, the better for the town, because next year we got to do the same thing. So we're going to do our due diligence, continue to try to get this list down, but we have to continue to do this for 10 years until we've identified every lead service within the community, and we have to remove it, including the property owner. So that's Water District number 5. Same applies for Water District 3 and 4, which are the junction. Again, members of the junction have been very good providing surveys to us, but we still need many more of them. I think at the junction, we only had a couple lead services down there, you know, maybe under 10 of the galvanized services. And it's the lead and galvanized services, again, that the EPA and Health Department are interested in. You know, we'd like to get those removed. You too will receive a letter if it's unknown. Basically, the town doesn't have the information to make the decision at this point in time if you have a lead or galvanized service. And until that determination can be made, annually a letter will go out from the town indicating that it's still unknown until we actually figure out what it is. So again, I just urge all our residents to do what you can do to help us out. Filling out that lead line service inventory sheet would be very helpful. Thank you.
Anything else under miscellaneous? Then that concludes our business for tonight. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mrs. Gucci. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.